Alrighty. Good evening, everyone. This is how I hooked up the boost gauge I installed the other day. The gauge I got off Amazon. I'll leave a link down below from Amazon where I got it. But it's a 0 to 60 psi gauge. And if you look right here where it says between 20 and 30 psi, the needle actually got to 26 psi with the HX40 turbo. Now that's with the copper tube. See right here's the copper tube right here for the boost gauge, and it just screws in the back of the gauge right there, and the light is, I just wiretapped it to the other light right here. I know it's not the right way of doing it, but that's how I got hooked up. And then the ground, of course, is hooked up to the ground on the triple gauge thing here. I got my wired temp gauge, which probably doesn't read right, probably because of broken or bent or messed up tube here. Oil and amp gauge works, and of course the factory gauges work too. Tachometer, that's actually a gas tach, but I had it kicking around, and so I hooked it up, and it works sometimes and sometimes it don't. When it does work, it reads like 200 RPMs, and then when I'm driving down the road, it goes up to 1,000, 1,200, which I know it's not right, but hey, it's something I had kicking around to try out and everything. But yeah, the boost gauge works good. It does. But now I'm gonna go under the hood and show you how it's all hooked up. And I have a video of showing what the boost pressure is, and that video is being uploaded right now, so as I talking. Okay, the copper tube for the boost gauge comes out of the firewall, out of that grommet there, goes around, goes into this, from the copper to 5/16 hose. On the end of that, I use a 5/16 barb with 1/8" pipe threads, and then a foot of 5/16 hose comes underneath the intake horn right here. Clears everything. It might be rubbing there now, but it clears everything, and then goes into a 90 with another fitting. And this grid heater, I took apart and took all the grids out of it, and then where the bolts stick out for the grid heater and stuff, I took it all apart and then tapped it and put plugs in on this side and the back side. Well, this one here is I'm using the 90-degree elbow there on that. But right back here is where those two plugs I was talking about. Right back there. Let me zoom in on it and show you. Right there. So I put two plugs there on the back. And so yeah, that's how I hooked it up. And the truck has been P-pump converted. The intake horn is from a 98, or no, excuse me. The intake horn came from a 2000 or 01 24 valve. The encoder pipe came from a 98 12 valve. And the HX40, which is, I know it's not actual HX40, it's a Chinese turbo, but it does the job. It does make 26 pounds of boost. Now it drops down 25 because I have a 5/16 hose, rubber hose on it, instead of that little plastic tube that comes with the kit on there. And the charge pipe coming on the passenger side to the includer off this 90 is to 2.5, I think. Yeah, 2.5 into the intercooler, and then back out it's 2.5 to 3 inch. I do plan on putting a bigger intercooler in this later. And you're probably wondering, what was the fan shroud? Well, I hit a deer the other night. You can see where I hit it right here on this part right here. Well, anyway, come to find out, after I took the radiator out to fix it, I didn't realize it, but the core support bolts were loose. Well, that was able to allow the core support to move without doing too much damage. And when I hit that deer, the fan, down here, the fan smacked the bottom of the radiator right there. You can see it was kind of rusty color. Well, the fan smacked it and hit that right there. And then it started pissing out antifreeze everywhere. And I had to quickly turn around and go back home. So, I repaired it with solder. I gooped that solder on there good too. And I didn't have anything to test it with. But I am going to get a aluminum 3-row radiator off of Amazon for this. And because this one has calcium deposits in it, I'm going to change that out anyway. And then you can see my boot. That's a 2.5 to 3 inch boot into a 3 inch pipe, and then the intake horn. And it's just straight open. There's no restriction or nothing in it. And then I got me an Ultima battery. 1,000 cranking amp Ultima battery. Let me wipe this off. Whoop, actually it's starting to come off. Whoops. There we go. But anyway, it's 800 cranking amps. Cold cranking amps, sorry. 800 cold cranking amps and 1,000 cranking amps. Ultima battery. It's a 4-post Ultima battery. So I got that in there. And the fan is fine. It's not bent or nothing, but the fan shroud is broken in 2 pieces. So, and I'm going to leave the core support bolts loose because that allows, if I hit a deer again, it'll allow it to move and go back. So, and the only damage it did was just right here. It bent this right here. And that's the only damage it did, right here. Everything else on the truck is fine. The lights are fine, everything is fine. It didn't do a whole lot of damage like I originally thought. And then I had to extend my oil pressure tube from my oil sensor to here. And then that copper tube runs inside the cab to the oil pressure gauge. And I didn't think about this, but that grease gun hose is not steel on the outside, rubber. Well, rubber does not ground very good. So there's a little pair of vice grips I put on there, and then run a jumper wire from the vice grips to the block. Right? Where'd it go? It's here somewhere. Okay, it's right here. Sorry. It's right there. You see the leg of it right there. There we go. It is right there. So that's where it's grounded to the block. So now the oil pressure gauge works like it's supposed to. So, and I'll fire it up for you. And right now it's run at 20 degrees of timing is where it's set at on the pump. And on the P pumps, you don't rotate the pump like on a VE. You don't do that on this. You actually have to pop the gear off and clean the hell out of the pump gear. Because if you don't, you go put it back on and torque it down to 140, 150 foot-pounds, and you go to get on it, it could potentially slip the timing on that shaft. Well, I've been lucky. It has not slipped yet, and I'm running at 20 degrees of timing. Now, if I make more power to it, I will have to change the head bolts out to head studs and probably get adjustable timing gear. And when I do that, instead of having a single turbo, I'll probably have compounds on it at that point later down the road. Maybe, I'm not sure yet. But I do want to put bigger delivery valves in this pump and either get another set of injectors or rebuild them with bigger nozzles in them later down the road. And then probably later down the road change this out to a steel intake horn that's more smooth transition, or I'll get the Banks twin ram intake like some of the YouTubers use on their 12 valve Cummins. So something like that maybe later on down the road. But this is what it sounds like with 20 degrees of timing. And I had to make a custom throttle linkage there. And for you guys that have the P pumps on 12 valves in a first gen or second gen, or second gen 24 valve with a P pump, and it's a manual truck, and you use this throttle bracket, I highly recommend getting the brass bushings from Power Driven Diesel. They're bell crank bushings. They're awesome because as soon as I put those in, it tightened the pedal up a lot better, and it's a lot smoother than the plastic bushings that go in that. So anyhow, I'm going to start the truck up and I'll show you how it sounds with 20 degrees of timing. Oh, and 20 degrees of timing in the winter, I know it's not going to be fun because it's going to cough until it fires up. So yeah, this winter is going to be probably hell for me. But it does have a block heater, so if I need to, I can plug it in wintertime. If it comes to it anyway. But I'll go ahead and start it up for you and let you hear it.